Hello YouTube world, my name is Nicholas Montez, and you're watching my YouTube channel, Nicholas Montez. Welcome back to another YouTube channel video, everybody. I'm so excited to have y'all back here together again. Now in today's video, we're continuing the next movie in my series, Journey to Belfast, where I'm watching all of Kenneth Branagh's films that I have not seen, and of course there are some movies I have seen of his, most of them I have not. And today we are reviewing probably one of the most controversial films of his movies. Probably one of the one that was most talked about last year, Artemis, Fowl, that came out on June 12th, 2020 on Disney+. But before we start talking about Artemis Fowl, I think it's very clear that we start talking about two films that came before Artemis Fowl, which were Thor and Cinderella, which I have seen, even though I haven't seen any of the other movies that came before and after that. But with that said, let's get started. Now, for me, I think Thor is just such a confusing film. Because on one hand, what I personally love about it is, of course, the cast, the world of Asgard, some of the action sequences, especially that fight with Thor, the Loki, Lady Sif, and the Warriors 3 on the Frost Giant world. But beyond that, the movie just, the way that it does its story just feels so out of place. It starts off with them doing the origin story between the war of the Asgardians and the Frost Giants, and then it basically shifts into Frost Giants trying to break into the vault, the Asgardians' vault, and then it transforms into this banishment film. Thor gets banished to Earth, Loki becomes king of Asgard. When Odin goes into the Odin fleet, he lets Frost Giants into Asgard, and then it's up to Thor to go and stop Loki from taking over Asgard. And I just think that it's such a weird movie because none of these ideas just feel that great. And then Loki literally kills his own father. And I just don't think that's really profound. And while I do like the dramatic elements of it, like the Shakespearean grandeur of it, and the action, the acting, and the cast, I just think that the story is a little bit weirdly put together. And that's the biggest problem with the film, but overall, very enjoyable. Now, Cinderella, I can definitely say that this is a much better film. Obviously, as this is a Disney remake, Kenneth Branagh doesn't really do anything new with the story. It pretty much, now, I think the only new thing that they did was they added this backstory of Cinderella when she was a child and her relationship with her father, and I thought that stuff was interesting, where you got to see how she kind of came to be and how she was this just nice little child, and there's this evil stepmother that comes in. When the dad dies, the evil stepmother takes Cinderella in and basically makes her the slave of the house. And it's an interesting story that makes it pretty cool. The visual effects are also pretty good. The dresses are nice. The conflict with the evil stepmother, Kate Blanchett plays a great evil stepmother, and when she does her evil things, it's like, you want to punch her, you want to do all the bad stuff to her, and it's just, not in an inappropriate way, I mean, like, angrily. But yeah, so yeah, it has some pretty good acting, it has a pretty good story, it has some good visuals, it has some cool dresses, and also I kind of like that they brought Richard Madden to play Prince Charming, and also play Icarus in Eternals this weekend, so that was pretty cool. But overall, it's definitely not my favorite Disney remake, but I do enjoy it. So now let's start talking about Artemis Fowl. much like what most people have said, I can definitely say that the best thing about this movie is that there are some familiar castings that I did like with Josh Gad and Colin Farrell, and those are really the two actors that I kind of saw in the movie, and I was like, oh, I recognize them. I remember Colin Farrell from Dumbo, and I did see him in, and he is going to be in the Batman movie. And of course, I remember Josh Gad from like playing Olaf in Frozen. I remember him in A Dog's Purpose. I believe those are the only two movies I've seen of him. But yeah, I thought that they were kind of cool to be in this movie. Also, I think that the idea of having this sort of heist, action, comedy, mystical world type of story is cool for a film like this. It's an interesting idea, but is it executed well? Well, let's just start talking about the bad now. And honestly, this is just a terrible film. Now, is it the worst movie that I've seen this year of non-new release films? No, it's not. It's one of them, but it's not. First off, you gotta talk about with this movie is that the whole story here just feels so out of place. Much like people have been, most people, what they think about this movie is that it just feels like someone had a perfect script, and then someone bumped into someone, and the whole script just got scribbled all over the place. And then when they went to go make the movie, that's what this movie turned out to be. And I kind of agree with that, honestly. And for the first thing that you gotta talk about with this movie is that the story just feels so weird. Where it sets up this kid, Artemis, where it starts out with this intervention with Josh Gad as this dwarf, where he's talking in a very weird way, and I just don't really think that was very enjoyable, because I don't think Josh Gad was this type of dark character. But, you know, like I said, I love Josh Gad. I loved him in Frozen. I love him in A Dog's Purpose. But this is not the Josh Gad that I like seeing. Anyway. So then you get into the character of Artemis Fowl, and we don't really learn anything about him. All we learn is that he's somehow this smart person. And honestly, every line that he says, everything that he does, there's not really any emotion to his character. He doesn't really show any, like, emotional attachment to him. He just acts like he's this smart person and knows what he knows what he has to do, like, always. And it's like he knows so much. And I just don't think that was very explored very well. And then you go to the other characters, and it's like the dad. The relationship between the dad is not really explored, and his history is not very explored very well. Or even the butler is not explored very well. The daughter of the butler, that's fine. And then they set up this whole fairies world, and they don't execute that very well. They don't really develop the characters very well, and they even try to make a little bit of a character arc between the main fairy and Artemis Fowl. And it doesn't really work because you don't care about any of them. You don't care about the fairy character, where she's basically just kind of whiny and basically just kind of not really interesting. You don't learn anything about her character. All you learn is that her father kind of risked her life to protect something, and that's not really interesting because you don't learn anything about where these artifacts came from. And then they try to set up this twist with this villain, and I thought it was going to be the commander of the fairies, and you don't even figure that out. And likewise, as big of CGI spectacle this movie is, the action in this movie just looks really weird and too fast for me to, like, process. And it's just too fast. It just looks too CGI spectacle. It just looks too expensive. Not too expensive, but it just looks like they're doing so much and trying to do the best they can out of it, and they just fail at it. So personally for me, I hated this movie. It's definitely one of my least favorite movies of 2020. It's actually my least favorite movie of 2020, along with Trolls World Tour. But yeah, that's my review for Artemis Fowl. Before I give my final score, be sure to tell me down below what are your thoughts on Artemis Fowl. Did you guys love it? Did you guys hate it? We're right in between. Have you read the books? And what were your expressions when you saw it last year? Or actually, did you see it last year when it came out on Disney Plus? But with that said, let's get on my scores. Alright, so that's it for my scores, but we're not done yet. We have one more thing to do before we end this video, and that's to see where does Artemis Fowl rank in my Kenneth Branagh ranking. So, let's see where Artemis Fowl ranks. Alright, so that's it for my scores. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My Instagram is Marvel6 and my TikTok name is WallowFan. If you guys don't understand those names, head to my about section so you can follow me on all social medias. I'm also on Letterboxd. It's the same name as Instagram. And also, it's Marvel_6_. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.